So, when a medical crisis hits and doctors are right there on the front lines, they start seeing things that sometimes just defy expectations. But how do we actually get from a surprising observation at a patient's bedside to what we can call a proven medical truth? That's the big question we're digging into today. And trust me, the answer is not as simple as you might think. It all starts with something like this, a chart from a recent paper looking at data from 2020 and 2021. Now, see those red and blue lines shooting up? Those are the blood oxygen levels of patients who were on some specific treatment protocols. I mean, look how fast they recovered. Now, compare that to the gray line way down at the bottom. That's a group that got the standard of care. Their oxygen levels actually went down before they started to slowly creep back up. The difference is, well, it's pretty staggering. And right away, you see that, and you've got to ask, right? Was this incredible recovery a direct result of the treatment they were getting? Or could it have been just a massive coincidence? How on earth could researchers prove that one thing actually caused the other? Well, to solve that puzzle, the paper's authors didn't just stop at what they saw. Oh no, they basically had to become detectives, pulling out a classic toolkit from the world of epidemiology to build a really solid case for what was going on. This whole process, it has a name. It's called causal inference, and you can really think of it like a detective's investigation. It's not about finding one single smoking gun. It's about gathering all these different kinds of clues to rule out other explanations and build a convincing argument for what really happened. And their go-to tool for this investigation? A very famous framework known as the Bradford Hill criteria. It's essentially a checklist, right? A set of 9 principles scientists use to figure out if a link they're seeing, like between a treatment and a recovery, is the real deal. So how did they use these criteria? Well, first up, they looked at the timing, or what scientists call temporality. The recovery wasn't slow, it happened almost immediately within just 24 to 48 hours of starting treatment. Check 1. Next, biological plausibility. I mean, does it even make scientific sense? Well, the paper lays out 20, not one, but 20 different biological ways the drugs could be having this effect. Check 2. And finally, consistency. Was anyone else seeing this? Yes. Turns out similar rapid recoveries were popping up in completely separate groups of patients in the US, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. Okay, so the researchers built what looks like a really solid case. But that brings up a much bigger and kind of thorny question. If you can use these established methods to build such a logical case for something, why is this kind of observational evidence so often met with, a ton of skepticism in the medical world? The answer, it turns out, lies in this one very powerful and, as some argue, deeply flawed idea that has dominated medicine for decades, and it's called the pyramid of evidence. This is it, the traditional pyramid of evidence. It takes all the different kinds of scientific studies and stacks them up in a hierarchy. You've got things like expert opinion way down at the bottom, and then near the very top, you have the so-called gold standard, randomized controlled trials, or RCTs. That arrow on the side says it all, quality of evidence. The thinking is, the higher you go on the pyramid, the better the proof. Now, this rigid structure leads to what some researchers call pyramid-based thinking. And here's the problem. It means the evidence from those lower levels, like those amazing patient recoveries we just talked about, it often gets dismissed or even totally ignored just because it doesn't come from the top of the pyramid. And if you think that sounds extreme, get this. This is a direct quote from a medical textbook published in 2018. It literally tells students that if a study wasn't randomized, they should just stop reading it. Just move on. That's a pretty powerful message about what kind of evidence is valued, and maybe more importantly, what isn't. But what if the pyramid is the wrong shape altogether? What if we've been trying to climb a ladder when we should have been looking at a circle? In response to these exact limitations, some researchers are proposing a completely different model for how we should think about medical evidence. So instead of a rigid pyramid, they suggest a wheel. And the difference is huge. The pyramid is all about ranking evidence. This is better than that. It puts RCTs on a pedestal. But the wheel? It's holistic. It doesn't rank evidence at all, it just categorizes it by type. The whole point is to integrate all the studies to get the total picture, instead of just dismissing huge chunks of it as low quality. And here's what it looks like. This is the totality of evidence wheel. You can see it has all the stuff from the pyramid, but it also adds in other critical pieces, like mechanistic studies, the science of how something might work. But the key thing here is that no single slice of this pie is treated as being better than any other. They're all just different, valuable ways of looking at the same problem. Okay, now this is where the wheel really comes to life. This is what it looks like when you apply it to a specific treatment that was discussed in the paper. Each slice is a different kind of study, everything from lab experiments all the way to clinical trials. And that outer ring is color-coded to show the results: green for positive, yellow for inconclusive, and red for negative. All of a sudden, you're not just looking at one study type in isolation. You're seeing the entire landscape of evidence, all at a single glance. Look, this whole debate, pyramid versus wheel, it's not just some theoretical argument for researchers to have over coffee. This has profound, real-world implications for how we find answers and how we make life-or-death decisions, especially when a crisis hits. As the Nobel Prize-winning economist Angus Deaton points out, RCTs are a fantastic tool for science, absolutely, but they have some serious limitations when you're trying to figure out what works for actual patients in the real world. The super-controlled environment of a trial just isn't the same as the messy, complex reality of a doctor's office. So, it all comes down to this really crucial point. When the next health crisis comes, and we all know it will, when time is short and lives are on the line, should our search for answers be a frantic climb up a very narrow pyramid, forcing us to ignore potentially life-saving clues along the way? Or should it be a full circle, a comprehensive look at the entire wheel of evidence to help us find our way forward? You know, the answer we choose, that could literally be a matter of life and death.